Hello and welcome to our speaker series of the Soul Care program offered by Volunteer Hospice of Clallam County. My name is Astrid Raffin-Palos and I'm the Volunteer Services Manager. I'm really delighted to see such a good response for today's topic, Why Death is the Best Teacher for Life, presented by Karen Wyatt. The size of this group and the number of registered people speaks of the interest in how we approach end of life, ours or the life of our loved ones, and how we're looking for ways to gain insight, knowledge, so we can raise our awareness and become more accepting of the inevitable. I think it's also a way to reclaim what's ours, our body, our mind, our spirit, and our soul, and to give it as much attention as we can now and for when the end will be near. For those of you unfamiliar with Volunteer Hospice of Clallam County, this organization was founded in 1978 by Rose Crumb, a nurse, on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. We are one of the very few independent hospices offering nursing care without billing Medicare or any government agencies or any other insurance companies. We are with the limitations inherent of those agencies. All our services are free of charge, and we have a lot of flexibility in how we offer the service. Aside from this speaker series, which is every other month, the Soul Care program also offers a monthly desk cafes called Tea to Die For. Tea to Die For are very informal gatherings in person where people can share their thoughts about death and dying over coffee, tea, and cake. There is one desk cafe every second Monday of the month in Squim, and another one every fourth Wednesday of the month in Port Angeles. However, in December, we'll take a break and there'll be none. All the details are on our website. Today, however, I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Karen Wyatt. I found out about Karen in 2017 when I was browsing Facebook. There was a monthly online book club called End of Life University. I was hooked. For me, she was, and she continues to be, an inspiration in her enthusiasm in sharing her knowledge, her wisdom, and her learnings. Karen Wyatt is the best-selling author of the book 7 Lessons for Living from the Dying, which contains stories of patients she cared for as a hospice doctor and contains the spiritual lessons she learned from them at the end of their lives. Dr. Wyatt also hosts End of Life University podcast, which features conversations with experts who work in all aspects of end-of-life care. She's widely regarded as a thought leader in the effort to transform the way we care for our dying in the US. You can find out more information at www.eoluniversity.com. Please ask your questions in the chat. We will pass your questions to Karen as the talk develops. You can also use the raised hand signal in the reaction button. If we see your hand raised, we will call your name. At that time, you can unmute yourself. The chat button and the reaction button are either at the bottom or the top of the screen when you bring your cursor to those areas. Karen, I want to thank you so much for being here with us, and I will let you take it from here. And please add anything you would like by way of introducing yourself.
Thank you so much, Astrid. It's my pleasure to be here. This is one of my favorite things, is just being able to connect with people. I'm grateful to Zoom that we have this ability to come together in groups like this. And it really warms my heart to be able to share some of the things I've learned with other people and to realize that this is valuable information that people want to know about and need to know. So I'm honored to be here, and I'm really grateful for all of you for attending today. So I have some slides to share. Should I go ahead and get that started now? Astrid, I guess I might as well. Okay. All right, so we'll get into this presentation here on why death is the best teacher for life. which is really something I've discovered throughout my life and my career. And so that's one reason I'm interested in sharing it with other people, because it's really been an awareness that has come to me gradually over time. And as you probably know, we're living in a society that in general ignores death and prefers not to talk about it and to avoid it, even though death is something that will affect 100% of us. Every single one of us will deal with our own death, our own mortality, and the deaths of people that we love. And yet still, we ignore death, we don't talk about it, and we actually have a taboo about it. It's considered impolite sometimes to bring up the subject of death and discuss it with people. But in my opinion, that is to our detriment. And in this little cartoon, you can see the Grim Reaper needs a hug from being neglected. And a Pew Research poll showed that nearly 62% of Americans say they have given little or no thought to death and their wishes for the end of life. And what that means is that those people who've never thought about death or considered that one day they will die arrive at the end of their lives unprepared, without having made any choices for themselves, without having ever contemplated how they might like to receive care or what they might like to have happen for them at the end of life. When that happens, those people usually end up in the medical system getting whatever treatment the doctors in the emergency room or the ICU feel that person needs. If the patient hasn't expressed any wishes and has never told anyone what they want, the medical system steps in and takes over. And that may not be the best outcome for most of us. So in my case, though, I became aware of death at a fairly young age. When I was 16, one of my high school classmates died in a hiking accident. And it was the first time ever that I had the realization that I could die someday, that people my age could actually die. And that thought became fixated in my mind. And I realized, like, I could die at any time. And therefore, if I'm going to accomplish something with my life, I better figure out what that is. I better be working on that, because who knows how much time I have. And I realized that was something unusual for a 16-year-old to think about, but nonetheless, that's where I was. That's what I thought about. And that was instrumental in a way in me deciding that I wanted to study to become a doctor. I felt like that would be a valuable use of my time. And around that same age, well, when I was in high school and college, I saw a movie called the Billy Jack. Some of you may have heard, I think, The Legend of Billy Jack. In the movie, Billy Jack talks about how he keeps death as a constant companion. He carries death with him on his shoulder, so that death always reminds him that time is short. And I really like that idea. I decided, okay, that's what I have now. I now have death as my companion. It goes with me wherever I go. And somehow, curiously, I found that comforting in a way at that young age. And then also I read a book by Carlos Castaneda, The Teachings of Don Juan. And in that book, he talked about how Don Juan viewed death as a wise advisor, as a teacher, more or less, that you could talk to and ask questions about things in your life. And for one thing, he would say, ask death about your problems, ask death if they really matter. I found myself more than one time being stuck in traffic, say, and getting really upset about it, and then remembering, oh, wait, I should ask my death, does it matter that I'm stuck in traffic? And the answer was always, no, that doesn't matter at all. And so it helped me get a perspective on my life, to have this view of death as an advisor or a teacher. And so the roots of this presentation I'm doing today came from all the way back when I was in college a long time ago. But there's more to my story, because even in those days, I thought about death. I hadn't really experienced much death in my life other than my classmate dying. And I had also not experienced grief to any great degree in my life. But then when I was in my early 30s, right after I finished my medical training, and I had started my own practice, which was very successful. I was a wife and mother with these two adorable little children. My father died by suicide, and he actually died just a week or so after this photo was taken of me and my two little children. So I was in a very precarious position, raising my little babies, trying to practice medicine, and then suddenly dealing with this devastating grief from my father's choice to end his own life. And I really struggled with it. It was the first time I'd ever experienced such deep and severe pain. And I was floundering in many ways and finding it difficult to get through that pain. And I'm showing you here a picture of my dad on my wedding day, walking me down the aisle, also a few years before his death. He was one of the people I cared for the most in my life. And the fact that I couldn't save him, even though I was a doctor and even though I had had training in psychiatry and had worked with patients who were suicidal and been able to help them, it tore me apart that I couldn't help my own father. I was not able to save him. And so, as you can imagine, I was just plunged into deep despair that lasted for a few years, and I was really struggling to find my way through it. And then I got the inspiration to become a volunteer for hospice. And I don't know exactly why that inspiration occurred to me, but I realized if I'm struggling with death and dying and grief, I just need to dive into it. I need to go into it. I need to expose myself to even more of it to help me understand it and to grow through this. So I became a volunteer hospice medical director. And ultimately, I discovered that that was the work I was really meant to do. I found a home in hospice, and I realized this is the place where I belonged all along as a doctor. And I eventually left my family practice and became a full-time hospice medical director. And it completely changed my life, helped me with my grief. It helped me understand death and dying and loss, and led me to a new place, a new career path, but a new spiritual understanding about life and death. And from there, once I retired from that work, I ended up writing this book, 7 Lessons for Living from the Dying, which she mentioned in the introduction, has stories of the patients I cared for and the spiritual lessons I learned from them. And then after that, starting End of Life University to start teaching about life and death and doing the podcast and speaking and sharing the things that I've learned. So that's how I ended up here today. So when we ask the question, why is death a good teacher? I wanted to just give you a few of the reasons why I have felt in my life that death was helpful to me and helpful to me for understanding life. And the first is that death reminds us that life is fleeting and fragile. And I think many of us go through life on a day-to-day basis, not really thinking about the fact that it could end at any moment. There's a quote from the Buddha that says, "The trouble is you think you have time." And I think it's really true that most of us believe that we have all the time we need. I don't need to call that person today. I don't need to say I love you today. I'll do it another time. I have plenty of time available to me, and I have my own story of pain because in the past, I was in my hometown where my cousin lived. She invited me to have coffee with her. I was a little bit busy on my travels, and I turned her down, and I said, I'll hit you up the next time I'm in town and we'll have coffee then. See, I thought I had time. I thought the two of us had plenty of time. We can have coffee together anytime. So I turned her down, and a month later, she died of a massive heart attack, and we never got to have coffee. I never got to speak with her again. And that was another revelation that I have to remember in every moment. You know, this opportunity came to see someone today or to talk with them or just spend time together. I may not have more time. We may not have more opportunities together. I should say yes if it's someone I really care about, that I really do want to see again. And so death has been a tremendous help to me in a way of always remembering. My mind would like to think that there will be lots of more time available for things, but in reality, there may not be. So in every moment, I have to decide what's the best use of my time? What should I do right now that will make the most difference? Who do I want to be with? Who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to share my love with? And so I wrote this, death opens our eyes, because I guess that's what I felt like happened for me back when I was 16 and I first became aware of death and its presence within life. It felt like I'd been asleep somewhat to the reality of death. Before I woke up, my eyes were open and I was able to see more clearly that death is everywhere. Death is a part of life. Walk out in nature anywhere and you will see life flourishing, but also death at the same time. In the forest, you'll see the decaying leaves on the floor of the forest, while living, growing trees are all around receiving nourishment from those decaying leaves from trees that lived long ago that now have gone. So when we allow death to open our eyes, we begin to see that it runs through the fabric of life. It's the tapestry of everything that we experience. That lets us see life itself in a different way. And I like this picture because there's something I've talked about before, which I call it having a galaxy view of life, where we actually zoom out and look at the big picture of life. And when I do that, I remember my life is actually really short. It's just a blip in time. And I have these opportunities to make something of it and do something with it, but I need to respond with some urgency, in a sense that life is short. And if I'm going to do something, I can't waste my time. I can't waste it away. But it also reminds me that there's more than just my little life happening here in this universe that is billions of years old, that is so vast and expansive that we can't even begin to explore the reaches of it. That helps me keep perspective too, because sometimes when I think my problems are huge and enormous, I just zoom out to this view, this big view, and I think, oh no, my problems, those are a tiny little speck in the entire universe. And it helps me not overthink or get over worried about what's happening in my life at the moment. And then death teaches us that even in times of crisis, and I really feel like in many ways that's where we are right now in the world, where we are in a time of crisis in so many different areas. But there are always opportunities to find new growth. I experienced that directly by working with patients in hospice who, even though they were in their last few weeks of life, still found ways to find healing and forgiveness with someone they cared about. They got in touch with someone they hadn't spoken to for years. They thought of messages they wanted to give to their grandchildren and to other people that they love, so that they could leave behind some of their wisdom. And so even when things look bleak, there is always the possibility of something new growing and blossoming in the moment. And that's something I've learned that allows me to always hold on to hope and optimism. And then, in my view, death also deepens us. And what I mean by that, I guess, is that death takes us down away from the superficialities of life, but down into the deeper meaning of life. It pushes us to really think about what is life about and what matters in life. Does it matter which grocery store I shop at or what kind of car I own? Not in the deep sense of life, of what's important in life. And so death always calls us to go deeper within ourselves, to learn more about ourselves, to know ourselves better, and also to heal ourselves and to heal some of our old wounds inside of us and to heal our relationships with other people. I love this quote. It's from a poem by Naomi Shihab Nye called Kindness. And she says, before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. And that has really rung true for me, that in some ways it's sorrow and grief and death and loss that make room within us for the joy and the love and the kindness that we wish to carry and wish to hold. And it is the fact that we've gone through difficult things that gives us the capacity to hold greater joy, greater love, and greater kindness for the world. And so, in a way, we need to be grateful for the losses that have happened, that have deepened us and that have given us this huge open heart that's able to hold more love and to hold more kindness. And then also death unites us. And if we think about it, we view our world as so polarized right now. And oftentimes we're aware of all the things that separate us from other people, all the ways in which we're different. We think differently, we value different things, we have a different view on life. And yet the most intrinsic part of who we are, the fact that we are mortal and we will die, we have in common with everyone, every human on the planet, and also every living thing on this planet. Even stars and planets themselves die. And so this mortality we share with everyone. And sometimes I stop and think about that, especially if I'm feeling frustrated, like I don't understand those people. I don't understand how they think. They're so different from me. I cannot imagine what's going through their minds or how they think. I stop myself and I remember, wait, all of us will die one day and all of us will experience grief in our lifetimes. When I remember that, I actually find that is the deepest connection I could possibly have with someone else. The fact that each one of us is going to face our own mortality, and we're also going to face the loss of people we love, and we're going to feel grief. The moment I become aware of that, I suddenly have compassion for every other person out there, because I know, like, you're just on your path too. You're just trying to figure life out too. You are probably also dealing with pain and grief and sorrow. And maybe the ways you behave that I don't understand are simply part of your journey, trying to figure this life out. So remembering that death is something we all have in common has helped me to feel connected more than ever before with everyone all around the globe. And then the last point of why death is a good teacher is that death is able to teach us wisdom. And I have this favorite quote from Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching a few thousand years ago. And his verse says, to attain knowledge, add things every day. So I think about learn something new every day, study something, read something, watch something, grow in your knowledge by adding things every day to what you know. But to attain wisdom, he writes, remove things every day. And what that says to me is that knowledge is of the head. Knowledge is something we can keep learning by studying, and we can kind of control the knowledge that we learn by what we read about and what we take in. But wisdom is of the heart, and wisdom, life teaches us through the losses that we experience, through the little deaths of life that come our way. And really the only way we grow in wisdom is by negotiating life one day at a time, every day, going through the challenges that we have and learning as much as we can from each of those challenges. So it's really death and loss and the things that are removed from us every day that allow us to become wiser and wiser. We go deeper within ourselves. We lose some of the superficialities that don't really matter. And we gradually learn the wisdom of the heart, which is the wisdom also of death. So my primary thought that I hold on to in my life is that death teaches us what really matters in life. It helps us sort through things. When I talked about death being a wise advisor and asking, does it really matter that I got a flat tire today? No, that doesn't matter. Does it really matter that my mother is dying right now? Yes, that matters very much. Does it matter that I go see her and sit with her? Yes, that really matters. That is a primary relationship of love in my life. That really matters. Most other things in life that we spend our time on and worry about don't matter enough, don't matter as much as our brains may tell us they matter. And that's why sometimes we need to be able to ask our own death, wait, is this important? Is this where I should be spending my time or not? Or is there something else right now that I should be doing? So as I was caring for my hospice patients, and I had this amazing opportunity to sit at the bedside with them as they were facing their end of life, and to just listen to them. I listened to their stories. I listened to the things they wanted to talk about, things they told me they had learned, things they wanted to pass on to other people that they were learning in the very last days and hours of life about what's important in life. It was a profound opportunity to be a witness to someone else's end of life journey and to have this chance to be a student.
Karen, you're muted. Sorry, Karen, suddenly you're muted. I'm going to unmute you.
There.
There we go.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to share with you these 7 lessons that I learned from my patients. And these are the lessons that I wrote about in the book, 7 Lessons for Living from the Dying. And I'll go through them in this particular order, hoping that you kind of see with me why these are important things for us to keep in mind. The first lesson is a word that none of us like to talk about, the word suffering. And along with death, none of us really like thinking about the fact that life contains some pain and suffering and difficulties. But my hospice patients showed me that it's important that we be able to embrace these challenges that come to us in life and not try to run away from them or hide from them. They also showed me that one of the reasons I was struggling with my grief over my dad's death is that I had been trying to repress it. I'd been trying to push it aside and not really experience the pain of it. And that's one reason I wasn't figuring it out. I wasn't figuring out how to navigate that journey better. And when I saw the courage of my hospice patients to be facing the challenges of the physical suffering they were going through, it enabled me to see that that's how I needed to approach my grief. I just needed to face it head on. I needed to sit with it and to feel the pain and let all of it come to the surface. And the picture I'm showing you here, I chose for a reason, which is a picture of the forest fire that engulfed Yellowstone National Park back in 1989. And I grew up in Wyoming, and so I spent a lot of time in my childhood in Yellowstone. We went camping there every year. So this was a huge tragedy. It also happened the same year my father died. This massive fire, 1.2 million acres were burned in that fire, and it was a tragedy. It was devastating. These the forests and the hillsides were just nothing but charred twigs, basically. And for all of us who loved that park, it was devastating to see this. You can see the ground is completely covered with ashes. And it seemed impossible that the national park could ever recover from this horrible, horrible event that had taken place. And yet, what we learned is that the lodgepole pines that burned in that fire had cones that had seed coverings that were very tightly closed. The only thing that would open the seed covering and allow the seeds to be released was heat, the heat of a forest fire. So after that fire, you can see here a picture, this is from the Forest Service, of one of those cones with all the seed coverings are popped open. The seeds in the midst of all the charcoal and the ashes popped out of the cones, landed on the ground, and began to grow just like this, these little tiny shoots of brand new trees that grew almost immediately after the fire. And so it's incredible to think that the fire itself was necessary for the new growth to happen. And the fire enabled the new seeds to be released so that new trees could follow. That fact, when I learned that, it intrigued me so much of how often do our tragedies also contain these seeds of something new, a new way to grow, a new way to see the world, something new that will happen if we just know to look for that and to watch for the new growth. And so in that forest, the cycle of life and death continued. The first thing that happened is that the ground became covered with fireweed, these pinkish purple flowers that normally hadn't bloomed in that park for years and years because the canopy of trees was so thick above, they wouldn't get enough sunlight to bloom every year. So fireweed hadn't really grown there for a number of decades, but after the fireweed began to grow and it covered the ground, and it was so beautiful, this carpet of beautiful flowers that covered up the scars and the ashes from the fire. Still, we had the burned twigs of all the trees, but the flowers began to grow right away and cover the ground, and it was very healing. And again, part of the cycle of life and death, as we saw. And then within a few years, here, those little tiny shoots we saw were growing already into the new forest. And by now, this many years later, that forest is amazingly beautiful. It has recovered to such a large degree. And it's such a good reminder that these cycles of tragedy and loss and death are normal in nature. It's part of nature. It's part of how life progresses. And so if we can remember that, remember these images, and remember that the seeds of new growth and new birth are sometimes allowed to grow because of the tragedy, then we can start to look for hope and beauty whenever we are in the midst of tragedy. Sometimes it's hard to find. Sometimes we can't see it, or it takes years for it to become visible. But for me, I keep hope alive always in my heart. And I believe that everywhere I look, there will be something new that can grow in the midst of every tragedy that I encounter. The second lesson that my patients taught to me is the lesson of love. And so many of my patients told me love was the thing that really mattered to them as they were facing the end of life, that mattered more than anything. It was the only thing they cared about. They were on the phone calling people they had had a falling out with 20 years earlier, wanting to make amends, wanting to catch up and reconnect. They wanted to see their family members, to express their love. They wanted to be close with the people that they cared about. Sometimes some people had so much disruption and conflict in their lives that they didn't know how to get a hold of people from earlier in life. They didn't know how to reach out to them, and they ended up having to imagine those people and tell their stories and think about them and kind of have their own rituals of love and forgiveness with people they wouldn't be able to see again. But so many patients emphasized to me that they had neglected love earlier in their lives, that they had set love aside in order to pursue other things. And it was only as they got close to death that they recognized how important love was. That message came through to me loud and clear. And I realized I want to live my life now, every day, with this wisdom of knowing that love really matters, and I need to pay attention to it and be thinking of it at all times. And so to me, that means remembering to focus on relationships, to think about the people in my life, the people who are not in my life any longer, to do what I can to make amends, to heal relationships, especially to tell people that I love them, and to say those words, and to make sure that I keep connections alive that I want to still be there, and to not neglect that, because again, we remember we may not have the time that we think we have to work on these relationships. And so at the very least, it's essential from this lesson of love that we learn to be kind to one another. And I also feel like that's something that's maybe missing to a certain extent in our society right now. We may have forgotten a bit how to be kind to one another, partly because of social media. I guess I see lots of people being unkind and almost delighting in it, delighting in being able to hurt someone else with their words. But this is just my reminder that we need to share kindness wherever we can, as often as we can. And there's so many opportunities everywhere, every day, to be kind. The third lesson that I learned from my patients was this lesson of forgiveness. And I already mentioned it in terms of when people started thinking about who they loved, many of them realized, I love this person, but we have some bad history together. We have a lot of pain between us that needs to heal. And so the practice of forgiveness became essential for a lot of my patients at the end of life. They talked about it, they worked on it, they asked questions about how to forgive others and also how to be forgiven by other people. Some of them had stories of people they had done harm to that they really wanted to be forgiven by. And sometimes people just needed to forgive themselves. They may have been carrying guilt and blame for themselves and shame for something that had happened in the past that they needed to be able to let go of. And so I saw many of my patients working on forgiveness, sometimes at the very end, the very last few days of life, still asking others to forgive them, still trying to forgive themselves. And my thinking about that was that when I looked back at my own list of resentments and grudges that I was harboring, it was bigger than I wanted it to be. And I realized, like, I think I should get started now. I think forgiveness is maybe a lifelong task, something we have to keep working on every day, or else it will overwhelm us at the very end of life if we haven't been working on it gradually over time. So now forgiveness and working toward that is part of my everyday life and kind of my spiritual practice. I think a lot during the day, what do I need to forgive? Is there something I'm holding on to that I'm still angry about that happened 20 years ago? I don't want to waste my energy on that. I need to work on letting that go. It's not something that can happen overnight either. It takes time and takes some work to practice forgiveness, but it's now part of my daily spiritual work. So literally, when we forgive other people, we actually free ourselves from a weight. It's as if we are carrying around with us this burden, this baggage that we're hauling with us of grudges and anger and resentment, and we carry it wherever we go. It takes energy from us to hold on to all of that. And when we're able to actually start letting go of some of it and practicing forgiveness, you can literally feel lighter, as if something lifted off of your shoulders. That's the amazing thing about practicing forgiveness. It's really helpful to you. And that's the answer I have when some people say, but if I forgive someone who did something horrible to me, I'll be letting them off the hook for their horrible behavior, and I don't want to do that. They were wrong. But the fact is, they will and probably are suffering their own consequences for their behavior. When you let go of your anger and resentment toward them, you're not helping them, you're helping yourself. You're letting go of whatever you're holding on to, and you're releasing the weight that is holding you down and burdening you. And it benefits your life. The person who harmed you, they're on their own journey. They have to figure out their own forgiveness journey somehow and be accountable, and they're facing their own consequences for their behavior. So it's important in the moment to remember that forgiveness is to help you grow and to help you free yourself up so that you have more energy available for the life you want to live right now. And I have a little dream to tell you about that I had one day, which applies here. In this dream, I was taken to a room where a circular room where I was shown this mural that covered the walls of the circular room. And the mural was made of little tiny videos that were showing scenes from my life. Every video was a different little moment or scene from my life. And there were all kinds of things there, lots of things I didn't even remember. Sometimes the tiniest moments that were barely significant to me, other times huge things like my father's death and my grief over his death. But all of these moments were captured together in this huge mural, and they all fit together like the pieces of a puzzle. And in the dream, I turned to the person who had brought me to that room to show me this, and I said, "Oh my goodness, it seems so perfect. It's all perfect how all of these pieces fit together. And I understand now how each little experience was necessary for the whole picture to be complete. Everything that happened, everything that I went to, it all had a place. It all fit together perfectly." And I said, if only I'd been able to see this earlier, I never would have worried so much. And the person, the wise man who was showing this to me, put his finger to my lips and said, "No, no, even the worry was perfect." And so I came away from that dream with this statement, this question: what if it's all perfect? And what if all the memories that I have that still haunt me, or that I'm still upset or angry about, what if they were all part of some perfect picture that I haven't seen yet, that I don't fully understand? What if it's actually all fine? They all had their place. They all fit in somehow in this journey I've been on. And what if I could just let them go? What if I just stopped being mad? What if I just stopped being upset that these things happened, and let them go and realize maybe someday it'll make sense to me how that fits in with this mural, this huge tapestry of my life. So I wanted to share that dream, and I was able to find this picture that kind of reminded me of the vision in my dream of all these images and little videos coming together to form this complete picture. So open your heart to forgiveness, because that's where forgiveness lies, within the heart. It's a heart-centered activity, and you choose with your mind, but you choose to allow your heart to open, to let go of the anger and resentment, and to allow more love in for whoever it is you are carrying anger. The next lesson that I learned about was the lesson of presence, or living in the present moment. And this was something I was not good at all myself. I hadn't ever really thought about the importance of being in the present moment. And my patients really showed me how much they slowed everything down at the very end of life, and they began to just appreciate every moment that was available to them. And from my old Carlos Castaneda days, here's a quote from his book, which says, "I want to convince you that you must learn to make every act count, since you're going to be here for only a short while. In fact, too short for witnessing all the marvels of it." So I remembered back, yes, I had heard that before. It's important to make everything count, every moment count, to be present in the moment, to experience it fully. And I knew it was important. I wasn't sure how to get myself there. And one night I was at dinner with my husband and I was completely distracted. We were at a very nice restaurant, but I was thinking of things that had happened that day, of the things I needed to do the next day. I was making a grocery list in my head, and I wasn't even tasting the food or noticing this experience we were having in this nice restaurant. And I actually said, we should come back here someday so that I can enjoy it. And I realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm here right now. I'm here. I'm actually here in the restaurant eating the food. Why am I not enjoying it right now? That's when I became aware that I was not living in the moment. I was always either thinking about something from the past or something from the future, and not bringing all my energy and focus just to this moment. But that is what my patients were so good at doing. This idea of being right here, right now, in this moment, not the next moment, not tomorrow, not yesterday, not earlier today, just right here, right now, noticing what is happening right now. I'm drinking coffee, I'm eating a cookie, like experiencing that as fully as possible. And so my patients told me in their stories how good they were at enjoying these little things of life, the little moments of life. And one patient, when I went to visit him, he was in a hospital bed that was facing French doors that led out to his deck. And it happened that day there was a squirrel on the deck that was gathering up leaves and little pine cones to build its nest for the fall. And so he was sitting there, and he'd been there, for quite some time, watching the squirrel, watching what the squirrel did. So in my visit consisted of sitting with him and just watching the squirrel, gathering things from the deck and scurrying across and carrying it over to the tree where its nest was. And we just sat and watched that squirrel for the longest time. And it was amazing. And I realized this is what being in the moment is. It's like appreciating something that's here right now that I could witness and observe, but that won't be here in a short while. This is going to end very quickly, and I may never see this again. So I need to appreciate it because it's happening right now. And that's what my patient said. I don't want to talk to you right now. There's a squirrel on my deck and I want to watch the squirrel. And I realized that is what I'm missing. I don't have that quality of being able to witness something fleeting that's happening right now for a moment and enjoying that. Another patient talked to me about eating an ice cream cone with his granddaughter. And he described to me so exquisitely how the strawberry ice cream tasted, how cold it was, the sweetness of it, the tartness of the strawberries. And I thought, I have never enjoyed ice cream that much ever in my life. And he savored it because what he said is, this could be the last ice cream I ever eat. I'm going to enjoy every drop of it, every morsel of it that I possibly can. So another example of just being present with whatever we're doing in the moment and focusing all of our attention on the act that we're doing instead of being distracted and thinking about other things. And the third thing was a patient who every night would watch the sunset from his window. And when I'd come to see him the next day, would describe the sunset to me and how beautiful it had been. And he actually spent quite a bit of time watching the very beginning of the sunset, watching the sun come down in the sky, watching it descend all the way down and all the colors that existed in the sky. And I realized, like, I had not really taken the time to watch a sunset completely. I'd glanced at sunsets, I'd noticed them, I'd stopped for a moment or two and said, oh, that's pretty, and walked on. I hadn't sat still and focused all my attention on the sunset. So these are just some of the little things that my patients showed me brought them so much joy and so much meaning at the end of their lives, and reminded me I need more of that. I need more of that ability to be present in the moment and to experience what's happening around me. The next lesson was looking at the purpose of life, because so many patients were struggling with wondering, did I fulfill what I came here for? Did I do anything meaningful in my life? And many of them felt some sorrow and some worry that perhaps they hadn't done enough with the lives they've been given. Perhaps they hadn't accomplished enough. And one of the things they began to talk about to me is that what mattered most to them is what they had learned during their lifetimes. And so I began to see, in a way, life is a classroom where we have these opportunities to learn things all the time. And my patients at the end of life felt really good about things they had taken the time to learn. And that is learning not just knowledge, but learning wisdom by going through life's challenges and life's experiences, growing deeper inside, learning more about love, learning about kindness, learning about forgiveness. Those lessons, the wisdom lessons of life, were the things that mattered to my patients, and in many ways mattered more than what they had accomplished. So I began to recognize that if I have the right attitude, I can learn from every experience, like the grain of sand inside an oyster that becomes a pearl. I can find a pearl, or the seed inside the pine cone that is released after a fire. If I look for it and I pay attention to it, I can find ways to keep learning, even from the most challenging and difficult things that happen. And my patients also showed me that at the end of life, it's not at all what you have, what you've accumulated in terms of wealth or material possessions, or what you've accomplished in terms of successes or trophies or awards. It's not about those things. It's not what you have or do, but it is who you are that matters at the end of life. And that's really what our purpose is more about. Have we become the best people we could be with our lives? Have we used life and its experiences, this classroom, to learn more wisdom and to be the best that we could be, just at being human, just at living every day, just at bringing love to the planet? And so I recognize that life itself, through the challenges and the difficulties that it brings us, is constantly molding and shaping us, just like a potter on the potter's wheel. And some things, like my father's death by suicide, that made a huge dent in whatever shape I was being molded into. That drastically changed who I was becoming, and perhaps brought me more toward who I was meant to be, because it brought me to hospice work and to working around the end of life. But I had to be willing to let that tragedy shape me. I had to be willing to let it change me and change everything about me that was superficial, everything external about me, move me to a new career path, in fact, in order to fully become the person that I was meant to be. The next lesson is the lesson of surrender, something I think we hear about a lot these days. People talk about surrendering and this idea of going with the flow of life. And that always reminds me of surfers, surfing on the waves. And John Kabat-Zinn said, you cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And as right now, I'm spending time by the ocean and remembering, like, the waves just come. They just come constantly, continuously. I can't stop them. I can't rush them. I can't change the waves. I have to live with the waves that come toward me. But you can learn how to surf the waves. And that is what you have control over when you're surfing the waves, is how you're balanced on the board, how you give your energy over, how you focus, and what you bring into the moment while you're surfing and riding the waves of life. So part of surrender for me is releasing attachments to how things were in the past, to make space for something new. And that was really the secret for me to beginning to work in a positive way with the grief I had from my dad's death. Initially, I wanted to go back to the past. I didn't want to move forward. I didn't want to grow. I just wanted to live in the past, in the days before my dad died. But I had to release my attachment to the past. It didn't exist anymore. It couldn't happen again. It wasn't to be. And I had to release that in order to make space so that something new could grow. And the final lesson, and I alluded to this right at the very beginning as we were talking about why death is a good teacher for life, this lesson of impermanence, which Buddhism teaches a lot, the idea that life is meant to be fragile and fleeting. Life was created, it was never meant to be eternal, to be infinite in the sense of at least physical existence. So life is fragile and fleeting because that's how life is in the universe. That's how the physical existence is in the universe. It's impermanent. It doesn't last. It's always changing. And so the lesson we need to learn from it is to not waste a moment of it, to be in the present moment, to not waste the time that we do have, to use it in the best way we possibly can by being present, by being focused, by bringing love and forgiveness and kindness into each moment. Because, as I said, in this universe, nothing lasts and everything changes. Everything is fragile, like this spider web that can be gone, gone in an instant. Nothing lasts and everything changes except love. It turns out that love is the only thing on earth that does last, that outlasts our physical form, that love is the energy that carries on when the physical form dies. Love is the higher consciousness we carry with us, the spirit, the soul that we carry with us that will carry on. And whatever love we learn to bring to the planet while we're here physically will continue on after we die. Same with the people we care about who have died before us. Their love is still available to us and still present. The energy of their love can't be destroyed. It's still present and still available for us to connect to. So to go back through these 7 lessons from death one more time, suffering, that we need to learn to embrace the challenges of life. Love, to remember that love is the only thing that matters. Forgiveness, to let go of our old resentments, which are weighing us down and taking up too much of our energy and our time. Presence, to learn how to just focus in and give our attention to each and every moment, to make every moment special in its own way. To find our purpose by seeing life as a classroom and remembering that it's about the wisdom that we learn and gather and who we become in this lifetime, far more than what we accomplish or what we gather and own in our lifetime. Surrender, to remember to go with the flow of life because we can't change it anyway. We can't change the tides. We can't change the river. We simply have to learn to let the flow of life carry us wherever it does, wherever it will. And then impermanence, remembering that life is fragile and fleeting, so we can't waste a moment of it. We do need to give it our attention and our time and treat each moment as special to us. So I have just a few tools to recommend, and I use the acronym GRACE to remind us of some things to keep in mind, some tools that we can use in this lifetime as we're trying to grow in wisdom. And the first is gratitude, to be thankful for life itself and for the things that have come our way in life, all the good things and even the challenges of life. To release what no longer serves us, to leave behind the things that just are not helpful anymore to us by practicing forgiveness and letting go of those things. Awareness, to focus on the present moment. Compassion, to remember to love ourselves and to love others. And the last one is equanimity, to learn how to find stillness within, how to go inside and just sit for a moment and watch the sunset without feeling anxious, like you should be doing something else, or watch a squirrel as it's building a nest, whatever that might be. So grace is helpful to me. It reminds me of these 5 things to think about each day when I'm doing my spiritual practices and working on growing in wisdom. And I have a little, excuse me, a little practice, a gratitude practice that I do. I call it the daily awe practice, to remind me to be in awe of life and all that it brings us. And for the A, I am awake to all possibilities today. I'm willing to see the good in everything that happens, and I'm fully engaged with life in every moment. Awake, willing, and engaged. That's the awe practice. And then for self-forgiveness, I do a lot of journaling, and for me, I write down things and write about things that I feel shame or self-judgment about. And many times I'm not even aware of what those things are. They come up to me. They come up from time to time in the moment, something old that I had forgotten about and didn't realize was there. So I write about it in my journal. And I write down, I forgive myself. I say it out loud. I hold my hand over my heart, take some deep breaths, and I talk to myself and say, I'm letting this go. I forgive myself. Sometimes I tear up what I've written and I might burn it in a fire as a symbol of truly letting go of whatever it is that I have judgment about. And then a little practice for acceptance is to say this phrase, right now, I'm okay. And this has been something I've utilized a lot over the last 2 years as we've dealt with the COVID pandemic and many other things happening. If I start to feel worried or upset or despair, and it happens sometimes from reading the news or hearing too much on social media, and I start going down the rabbit hole of thinking, oh my gosh, this is terrible, everything is horrible, I stop and look around me and think, wait, right now, I'm okay, I'm fine. I have a roof over my head, I have food in the cabinets, I'm safe where I am, I have people in my life that love me. Right now, I'm okay. And the only thing that matters right now is this moment, and I'm fine, I'm okay. So it's very helpful to pull us out of the despair of worry and fear about what's going to happen in the future. Come right back to this moment and say, but see, I'm okay right now. And right now is all that I really have. I don't know for sure what's going to happen tomorrow or down the road, but right now I'm okay. Very, very helpful practice to remember. And then for compassion, this is something else that I use all the time, the loving kindness blessing, which I say to myself or I say it for other people. May I be at peace. May my heart remain open. May I realize the beauty of my own true nature. May I be healed, and may I be a source of healing for this world. And then for equanimity, for being able to find stillness within, I call it the infinity meditation, but based on this little poem by William Blake, to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. And sometimes I will use something tiny like a grain of sand. And this photograph, these are all individual grains of sand photographed with an electron microscope, which magnifies them enormously. And the amazing, miraculous thing is that every grain of sand, when it's magnified, actually looks like the piece of shell or stone or crystal that it originally came from. And that just blew me away when I saw that. So to remember, everything is contained within everything, even the tiniest atoms, the tiniest grain of sand contains everything. And sometimes I meditate on that, a grain of sand. Sometimes I meditate on the universe and the stars and the vastness of the universe. So you can go big or you can go tiny. And both of those help me get to a place of just stillness and calmness inside. So it's important that we remember the cycle of life and death. It is the key to the survival of everything in nature. Nature wouldn't exist. Life couldn't exist if it weren't for death and the nutrients of things that have died, nourishing the living things that are here. The cycle of life and death is essential for us. And if we can embrace that and even come to enjoy it and to see the beauty in it, that can inform us for all the days of our lives, all the rest of our lives, to know I'm part of the cycle. I'm part of this cycle. I'm in my lifetime now. I experienced birth at the beginning. Death will come at the end, and I'm in the lifetime that occurs in between. But I'm part of the cycle, and one day this physical form of mine is going to nourish other living things too, just like I've been nourished during this lifetime. So I end with this phrase from French, joie de vivre, which I love, which means simply the joy of life, the joy of being alive. And I love to think about that. It is joyous that we're here at all, simply to be alive. There is joy within it, regardless of what's happening in life right now, what's happening in the moment, regardless of the challenges or the tragedies that we might be facing. There is joy in simply being here, waking up each morning, breathing each breath. There is joy. And I hope that you are able to experience that joy as well. And I hope that me sharing these lessons is in some way helpful to you on your journey as you are working your way through your life and learning the things that life is here to teach you. So thank you for your attention, for giving me your time. I have time for questions. And this is if you want to find my podcast, you can go to eolupodcast.com. It's also on all the podcast platforms out there that you can find. Just look for End of Life University. And then eoluniversity.com is my website. So thank you everyone very much. And Astrid, I don't know if there's some questions that you would like me to answer, and I can stop the share unless there's something on a screen that people would like to look at longer, anything to write down, or I can leave the slides on if that's helpful.
Yeah, okay. For now, I don't have any questions. I just have a thank you for amazing lessons, and thank you for such a lovely presentation. Totally love this. And this came from people who do work with the dying and do work in hospice. And I am truly inspired again and again. This was really wonderful. I wonder if anyone would have questions. I'm going to change the gallery view, so maybe I can see more names. And if anyone has a questions, you can either put it in the chat or raise your hand, and we would, see if anyone has a question. I don't have really questions. I have comments. You made me think of Franco Staszewski and the 5 invitations that he talks about. You made me think of Byron Katie when she says there is my business, your business, and God's business. And one of the things that went through my mind as you were talking through your presentation, you say how it's important to really focus on what really, really matters, the big thing that matters. And yet how crucial it is to pay attention to the little things that we enjoy. And I was like, okay, so when do we know which one we can let go of? And when do we know which one we actually need to pay attention to?
That's kind of the paradox of it all, that because we live moment to moment, really, like we're really only here in this moment. Like it's only in this moment that we can love or experience anything. You know, the past is done and the future isn't here. So we have to live in the moment and notice what's around us and the little opportunities we have to take something in, but always informed by those bigger lessons and bigger issues, like of life in the moment. So it's as if we're bringing those high level big things, the wisdom of life that really matters, and bringing it into the little moments of life and using the wisdom to help us make our decisions in the little moments. So yeah, it's a paradox because we're actually being asked to hold on to two opposite things in a way at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, John had his hands raised, and also there's a question. So Anine Johnson, I won't forget your question, but John, you had your hand raised. Do you want to address something?
Just real quick, great. So glad you did this, and I was a chance to see it. But you mentioned at the beginning Billy Jack.
Yes.
Just had to say, it's crazy to me. I have the DVD.
Oh.
Many times in my 20s, and so that was just astounding to me. And I think I did it around the same time I was reading the Carlos Don Juan book.
Isn't it? It's funny the things that we came across at that age, but how profound they were, and you know what a difference it made. That one movie, I watched it so many times over and over.
Me too. And I'm going to watch it again very soon.
I think I will too. I'm going to try to find it. I don't have the DVD. Maybe I can find it though.
It's available, yeah.
So, and Anine Johnson had a question, and she says, Karen, you talked about suffering. I find it harder to watch another person suffer than to suffer myself. What advice do you have for being present to someone who is suffering through the dying process and you are not able to comfort them?
One of the things that I have exactly the same feeling and thought that was one of the most difficult parts of working in hospice. Of course, we did everything we possibly could to help patients with suffering, but I remember sitting with a patient with cancer, and she said to me, yes, I'm having some pain right now. And she said, but you know, this is my pain. And she said, this is what life brought me. This is my pain, and this is how my journey is going. And she said, I honestly don't mind that I'm in pain right now because I'm here for all of it. I'm here for whatever is happening, and I'm going to learn from it. And she was a profound teacher to me, and she reminded me in that moment that there are many things we can do to be helpful to people, but we have to be able to be present ourselves, and then to surrender the control over it, because it really is not in our power. Sometimes we can't change certain things. Then we have to sit and be a powerful, calm witness to what's happening. And sometimes I did find that being able to be there and be calm inside while someone was going through a difficult time was actually the most helpful thing I could do, because my calmness would help ease their anxiety, which was also helpful for their suffering. And just being willing to be there and be a witness, and to understand that I've done everything in my power that I know how to do, that I have the ability to do. We've taken care of everything that we possibly can to help this person. And now I have to accept that they're on their journey, but I'm here as a witness, and I will sit with them, and I will be present for it. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Well, I makes sense to me. Definitely. And Jennifer Blaylock was asking the web address. So I did put in the chat the www.eoluniversity.com. And that's, that works. And there is also eolpodcast.com.
EOLU podcast is, yeah. Yeah, EOLU podcast. The podcast you'll also find a link to at eoluniversity.com if you'd like to go there.
I put both. Okay. Rosalinda has a question. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's not a question, it's just a comment. And thank you for all this, very practical, philosophical, spiritual, helpful ways of actually living our life. And I think that what makes it really difficult for us to actually follow these things is that we are really kind of focused on the non-essentials of life instead of actually, trying our very best to actually live, all these things that you have actually mentioned, because they're really very, very helpful in making life really more beautiful.
I think you're exactly right. It's as if some of the superficial or more non-essential things in life, they kind of scream at us all the time. They're constantly demanding our attention, and it's very hard sometimes to pull away and look at other things as well. And so, I try to use the quiet moments of the day as times when I can go to this place where I can think about these things, because there will be many, many hours during the day when I can't pull myself away from it, as you said, the non-essential things that are there. So utilize the quiet times that are there as a way to try to develop a little bit more my practice. But I always remember when I was in a yoga class, my teacher said, we were trying to do balancing poses and we kept falling over. And he said, you have to understand that learning yoga is just learning how to get back in balance after you've fallen out of balance. And he said, falling out is part of it. That's part of the journey. And yoga is just that you learn how to get yourself back in balance. And so I realized, oh, the idea isn't to be perfect and to be perfectly in balance. It's that over and over every day I figure out, oh, wait, I got all distracted over here. I was thinking and worrying about that. But what really matters is this over here. Over and over, I learn how to get myself back and bring myself back into balance.
I'm just checking here. Also I wanted to say, Karen, your images are just absolutely so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me, because I love visual images, and I think it can convey energetically kind of a lot of the meaning that I want to bring. So I work hard on trying to find the right images. So thank you.
Yeah. No, it's really they're very powerful, very simple and very powerful. And the little quotes with it really sort of succinctly really helps us grasp what you're talking about. And one person made a comment that this was I'm looking for it now, that it was beautiful, succinct. Thank you. And then that makes so much sense. It's like it was perfect.
And I would just say again, to remember that needing help and support from other people that's not a negative, hurtful thing to other people. That's actually sometimes a gift, because of the things that are meaningful in life, to be able to step up and offer help to someone, that can be one of the most powerful things any of us does. And so remember that if you let people know you need help, there are people who that is what their journey is waiting for. That's what they came here for, to be of service or to help someone. And so you'll be giving them a blessing, really, if you allow them to help you and take away any guilt that you feel or any shame or embarrassment. Because all of us ultimately, we all need help, and we all will need help. We will all be in situations where we need others to step in and help us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this. This was wonderful. I took a bunch of notes and I screenshot all of your slides. Thank you so much.
Okay. You're welcome. Blessings and love to you.
Thank you. You too. Bye, Karen. Bye, Astrid.
Mhm.
Bye, Laurie. Yeah. And we're nearing the end of the session here. If anyone else has any comments or questions, I welcome them at this time. Minju has some comments and questions. So she says, thank you for the beautiful talk. I also have a question relating to forgiveness and compassion. What if it is too late and one lost the chance to talk with a person because of hesitating? Under this situation, forgiveness seems harder to achieve, whether it is for that one person or for oneself. Could you please share some thoughts on this matter?
One thing that was really helpful for me about this, and I mentioned my cousin I didn't have coffee with and reconnect with her right before she died. I learned about this, and maybe you've heard of it, this Hawaiian practice called Ho'oponopono, which is a forgiveness practice that you actually do all by yourself, just in your own room, for another person who's at a distance. And it can be someone who's not alive anymore. But what you're doing is actually clearing the air and clearing all the energy that is still hanging there, of whatever it is, of regret or shame or blame, or whatever it might be that feels negative. And let's see if I can get it straight. Someone else might remember these better than I do, but it's something. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me, and thank you. These 4 statements. You hold the other person in your mind, their image of who they are. They don't have to be alive, as I was saying, or anywhere near you, but you hold their image in your mind and you speak to them directly. And it's amazing how freeing it can be, for me, to see my cousin and talk to her, to be able to say to her, I love you, like, please forgive me for not seeing you more, for not having coffee with you, for not connecting with you. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? I love you. Thank you. Thanks for being in my life. Thank you for what you offer. And when I first heard about it, it sounded a little bit silly, or I couldn't even imagine that it could make a difference, but it's powerful. And there's lots of stories, even of patients in psychiatric wards who've been helped by their practitioner doing this practice for them from another room. And anyway, it's very interesting, but definitely there are things that you can do, that you can work on within yourself, that can make a difference.
Thank you. And I put in the chat a link that links to that Ho'oponopono prayer. So, and you're right, the words are correct, Karen.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure I had it in the right order.
Yeah. Well, we are at the at the mark when we end. So thank you so much for everyone for participating, and thank you, Karen, for really a beautiful, wonderful presentation. I do look forward to seeing everybody in January. We're going to take a break for the rest of the year, but in January we're going to start with a talk by Daniel Four on ancestors in the grieving and dying process, about ancestral healing. So I hope that anyone present here will be willing and able to attend. And I want to thank you again so much, Karen, for something that was just rich and inspiring and soothing and informative, much more than what I was expecting or could have envisioned. So thank you again.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks all of you for spending this time with me and giving me your attention and focusing for the moment, because this was kind of created out of our collective energy together today. So thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.